After the civilization on Earth's surface was wiped out by mysterious beetle-like creatures called the Huge, humanity developed magical abilities and started living on a floating magical academy called Mistgun. One day, the monsters eventually found out about the academy, so the best wizards from the academy were assigned to fight these monsters. Among them was a disgusting, ugly, lonely loser mage knight called Kanata, who along with his not-so-great team of Yuri, Chloe, and Lloyd fought the beetle monsters. Even with lame team members, Kanata managed to kill hundreds of monsters, but their numbers kept increasing. Kanata used all 3 of his brain cells and ultimately told his loser team members to save their asses while he stood behind to face the enemies. His team also left him without a second thought and was probably glad that Kanata's ugly face was finally going to get eliminated. Just when he was about to issue the ultimate attack, a giant beetle monster emerged from behind the clouds and was ready to isekai him into a fantasy world. As the monster began to charge up the energy beam, Kanata took out his big black sword and used his ultimate move, filling the sky with a bright light. 6 months have passed since then, and Kanata is still alive and has returned to perform his usual activities in the academy. On the other side, Chloe submitted a report to the head of the Sky Academy, Freon, regarding 3 female students named Misora, Lecty, and Riko. Each girl had her own problems, making them the worst students of the academy. Freon came to the conclusion that the 3 girls needed Jesus. Sorry, I meant a different kind of instructor, one who would surely clap their cheeks, and who could be better than Kanata. Meanwhile, Kanata was busy checking the inventory of the academy, and got a visit from Lloyd, who was glad that Kanata's ugly face didn't get eliminated a few years ago. After checking everything in the warehouse, Kanata suspected that someone was stealing the weapons stockpile. Lloyd then informed Kanata that Freon wanted to see him during lunchtime. Reluctantly, the next day, Kanata went to see Freon, and when he was returning, he bumped into Misora, which resulted in him accidentally holding her cannons. She called him a pervert and asked for an apology. However, Kanata was too much of a Giga Chad and asked her to apologize for destroying his Lil Wayne. Instead of apologizing, the ugly bitch started calling other students, taking the hashtag #MeToo movement to a whole different level.
It's an evil world we live in.
However, when she opened her eyes, Kanata was already gone to the field sink to wash his pants. While trying to get the mark off his pants, Kanata met with Riko, who accused him of being a pervert as he was standing in his shorts. She thought that he is a man of culture and took off his pants because of her beauty and plots. However, as soon as she turned around, Kanata had already left the chat and moved to a nearby bathroom to put on his pants. Unfortunately, the same thing happened to him again when he realized that he accidentally entered the girls' bathroom. While trying to get the heck out of there, Kanata bumped into Lecty, who was entering to change clothes. Since it's a girl's bathroom and Kanata was still in his shorts, Lecty, like the previous 2 girls, called Kanata a pervert. From that day on, she would serve every customer, and when Kanata left, customers started calling Lecty to deliver their orders. Even if that's not bad enough, when male students saw her wearing a maid costume, they scrambled to place orders like it's the end of the world. They started teasing her, and the situation was enough to make Lecty feel nervous and she ran away. Meanwhile, Lloyd, who was also present at the cafe, realized that the girl in maid's clothes was Kanata's student. After some time, Misora came to the cafe and found Lecty hiding in an elevator. Upon learning about Lecty's special training, Misora decided to help her out by dressing in a sexy outfit and serving the customers along with Lecty. All the simps were taken over by the girl's beauty, and Lecty was amazed by Misora's confidence and agility in taking orders. At the same time, Lloyd advised Lecty about her social anxiety problem and told her to trust her instructor's training. After hearing his advice, Lecty became more confident and learned to communicate well with the customers and was serving with the same high spirit as Misora's. Later in the afternoon, Kanata took both girls for a treat and bought them some ice cream. While relaxing, Lecty understood that the purpose of Kanata's special training was to eliminate her social anxiety. However, Misora thought that she had failed to complete her special training and realized that she knew nothing about her team members. If she had, then she would have known about Lecty's social anxiety issues. Kanata, on the other hand, thought that Misora had made progress and found her own weaknesses through the training. Later in the office, Kanata began to study Misora's file, and was surprised to learn that despite having magic power higher than most rank students, Misora's sword game is very weak. Instead of using her magic to win, she attacked more often with her sword. Chloe, who came to see Kanata, seemed amazed by his sincerity in teaching, but wasn't sure how he would bring out the hidden potential of the 3 worst students of the academy. The next day, Kanata ordered Misora to stop using her sword and focus on her magic abilities. Unfortunately, Misora refused to give up using her sword even though her sword skills were terrible. She thought Kanata was a good instructor, but after hearing the request, she felt disappointed by him and immediately left the classroom. We learned that Misora didn't want to stop using her sword because of the memories of her late mother, Sosi. She was one of the best sword knights of the previous generation and defeated hundreds of beetles with her ginormous plot sword. Sosi was the role model for many young wizards, and one of the people greatly inspired by her was her own daughter Misora. Ever since Kanata ordered her to stop using the sword, Misora felt very sad and visited her mother's grave. There she took an oath to never stop using the sword and even stopped going to Sky Wizard Academy. Back at the cafe, Lecty was also feeling bad for Misora's sudden disappearance. After realizing that Misora had been absent from the academy for a few days, Kanata decided to pay her a visit. Later, he arrived at Misora's family's steakhouse and met her father, who is a famous chef in the city. Upon seeing Kanata's sudden arrival, Misora stopped whatever she was doing and hurried away. After she left, Kanata introduced himself to Misora's father as his daughter's instructor at the academy. While talking, he saw the photo of Misora's mother and stated that Misora looked exactly like her mother. According to Misora's father, that photo was the only way he could remember Misora's mother. It turned out that whenever a Sky Wizard Knight gets killed, everyone automatically forgets about that person and any memory associated with the individual. Misora was the only person who still had many memories of her mother. He remembered the time when Misora's mother spent most of her life as a wizard knight. But whenever Sosi returned home, she always did her best to be a good mother. Every time Misora was with her mother, she took her to fly around and showed her the city from above. One day, when Sosi was about to return home after finishing her duties, Misora asked her father to cook a steak for her. But he suddenly forgot about Sosi. It turned out that day Sosi died while protecting humans from a very strong enemy. Misora's father was only able to remember his wife after some men from the Sky Wizard came to inform them of Sosi's death and hand over her sword. On that day, Misora took an oath to become a great sword knight like her mother, after which Kanata met Misora and asked her one last time to let go of her sword. But she refused to do so and stated that the sword was the last thing she had from her mother. Seeing her determined, Kanata smiled at Misora, telling her that she could use her sword. It turned out Kanata was testing Misora's willpower and knew how to make her a better swordsman. He then made her vow at her mother's grave that she would become the best swordsman that the world has ever seen. The next day, Misora returned for training, but besides the training, Kanata also registered the girls for an upcoming tournament. He started collecting data on their opponent's team to form a battle strategy accordingly. Coincidentally, Riko met Kanata at the cafe and began telling her experience of meeting an otherworldly beauty while taking a shower. Kanata thought that she is high as fuck or might have seen a ghost, but it turned out that the otherworldly beauty Riko was referring to was her own reflection in the mirror. Kanata couldn't help but laugh at her statement, and thankfully by this time he got used to Riko's narcissistic behavior. Unlike Misora and Lecty, who underwent intense special training, Riko thinks she doesn't need any additional training, and therefore rarely attended any special training session. The next day when Riko came into the class, Misora and Lecty asked her to join them in the training. However, she simply refused because she thinks a goddess like her has no use for sweat and toil. Misora tried one last time to make a delusional person join them because they would be participating as a team. Riko once again refused to join them because she didn't want to humiliate herself by participating in a match they won't win. Kanata, who just arrived there and overheard the girls arguing, agreed with Riko's statement. He admitted that avoiding participating in a match, knowing that you would lose, was the right course of action. But he was sure that he had the plan to win the match. Kanata then took Misora to the sky for a secret sword technique. He summoned his big black sword and began gathering a lot of magic energy. Within seconds his sword got fully charged before Kanata finally shot all of that energy toward the clouds, creating a huge explosion. Misora then tried to recreate the explosion with the help of Kanata and succeeded on the first try. The guy is a pro in teaching new moves to girls. However, Misora's magic energy was still not strong enough, making her shoot the sword cannon only 3 times a day. Meanwhile, Riko was keeping an eye on Misora and Lecty using her clairvoyance vision power, and was somewhat infuriated with their special training. When she saw both the girls getting proficient in their skills, Riko for the first time thought Kanata could also strengthen her. Just then, Kanata appeared behind her, asking for an opinion about the girls' training. Riko thought that the move he taught to Misora was good but useless in a match. The blade's long charging time could have easily given the enemy a chance to attack before Misora could launch an attack. Kanata was aware of that from the start, but together with Riko's long-distance analytical skills and Lecty's close combat fighting skills, they could cover their weaknesses. According to Kanata, each person has an important role, and they would only win the match by working together. He then asked Riko to join his harem, sorry I meant the team, and participate in an upcoming match. Riko is surprised to hear this because Kanata never forced her to join the team or showed any interest in training her. He explained that he trained Misora and Lecty first so that their abilities could match up with Riko's. Kanata had recognized Riko's potential, and hearing those words made her plot feel proud, so she decided to join the competition. The next day, the competition begins. Misora and the others got to the arena and came face to face with the other team. Just when the match was about to get started, an announcement was made of a possible beetle attack on the south of the island, who were there to peel out human bananas, due to which the match had to be postponed, and everyone evacuated from the arena. The floating island formed the protected barrier around it, while the best night wizards were deployed to fight against the monsters. As the beetle monsters got close to the city, Kanata and the girls chose to help people evacuate, while Yuri, Chloe, and Lloyd prepared to fight the beetle monsters from the other side. Soon after, a separate detachment of the beetle monsters managed to break through one of the defense shields and entered the city. Not long after, hundreds of giant insects invaded the city, destroying everything in their path. Kanata and the girls decided to deal with the monsters before they created a bigger mess. Misora summoned her giant sword and fired a sword cannon blast at the beetles. However, she was still an amateur and couldn't control her magic powers, which resulted in Misora destroying some part of the city. Fortunately, she was able to kill the misfortunate beetle monsters and save the remaining part of the city, even though the damage caused by her cannon was quite severe. On the other side, from the control room, Freon watched the beetle numbers increasing constantly, and were now in thousands. At this rate, soon they would be out of options, so Freon ordered the Wizard Knights to find the commander of the beetle army called Chimera. If they managed to find and kill the Chimera beetle, then all the beetles would automatically retreat. Soon after, the Knights managed to find and kill the Chimera beetle, but surprisingly, the beetle army still continued to fight as strong as it was before. Kanata came to the conclusion that most likely there was more than one Chimera beetle leading the beetle army, and they should find it soon. On the other side, Yuri, Chloe, and Lloyd were surrounded by the beetle army that had broken into Miscun. However, Lloyd is certain that Kanata would find the remaining Chimera and overcome the beetle army. Meanwhile, Kanata ordered Riko to find the Chimera with her clairvoyant vision, and she began scanning the surroundings. Within a few seconds, she locked onto some unusual activity of the beetles at a distance. Kanata ordered Misora to take down the beetles that entered from the gap, while Lecty was assigned to eradicate the beetle army that had infiltrated the city area, and Riko would provide cover to Misora through long-range sniping. Suddenly, Misora began hearing boss music and saw the Chimera approaching from behind the smoke. It shot a huge energy beam at Misora, but fortunately Kanata got between and managed to save Misora from the attack. Even though being on low magical energy, Kanata summoned his sword and began to use his ultimate sword technique. He lunged towards the Chimera with lightning speed, killing beetles on his way, and shot a blast cannon at the monster. The attack was powerful enough to kill the Chimera and resulted in the remaining beetle army retreating from Miscun. Soon, Yuri and the other Wizard Knights realized that Kanata had defeated the enemy, but the attack had completely drained his magical energy, and he fell to the ground. However, after the victory against the beetle army, the matches of the rank competition resumed. The girls entered the match pretty confident and were sure that they could beat the opposing team, but by the time the competition ended, they lost by a large difference in points. Kanata, who was pretty confident that his team would win, somehow wasn't surprised by the defeat. A few days had passed since then. The head of the Sky Academy, Freon, received an order to conduct much more realistic training and speed up the process. After the recent attack of the beetle army, Kanata began to train his team harder. He ordered the girls to burst hundreds of beetle-shaped balloons in the sky. Unfortunately, the girls still lacked maturity and couldn't unite their strength. Each girl began attacking the beetle balloons separately and didn't fight as a team. Soon after, Misora began shooting in all directions, while Riko was busy dressing up and had no intention to fight. And Lecty once again felt nervous and began to panic after being surrounded by beetle balloons. For the time being, it seemed Kanata had failed to teach the girls the importance of teamwork and the attack strategies. On the other side, Freon had a meeting regarding the damage to the city center and discovered that Kanata's team was the one who caused the damage. At first, she decided to suspend Kanata's team for a few days, but after looking at the result of the recent competition, Freon planned to dismiss Kanata from his duties as he wasn't able to make the girls strong. Upon hearing the Academy's decision to suspend Team E601, the girls sure looked annoyed, even though they fought and defeated the Beetle army including the Chimera, but due to lack of eyewitnesses, they got no appreciation at all, and you guys were thinking only your job is the shittiest. However, Kanata didn't give a flying shit about it and focused on preparing the girls for the upcoming inter-team tournament. Despite their previous performance, Kanata planned to register the 3 girls so they can participate and is determined to win the tournament. Later that day, Kanata was summoned to Freon's room, and she stated that he had been relieved from his duties as the instructor to Team E601. It turned out Kanata wasn't bothered if he was being fired from his job, but managed to convince Freon that he was the only one who could train the 3 girls. He then challenged Freon, stating that if his team managed to win the tournament, then she would have to revoke the suspension penalty of his team. Freon was confident that Kanata's team won't be able to win the tournament, so she accepted the challenge. Later, he informed the 3 girls about the tournament and the agreement he made with Freon. But before leaving, he informed Misora and the others that the matchmaking for the tournament would be held tomorrow, and they should get ready for it. On the other side, Freon took Yuri, Lloyd, and Chloe to the research center to show the secret beetle research program. There they saw a bunch of nerdy-ass scientists who managed to obtain some parts of Chimera and were able to learn a lot about it. A scientist named Nua, who had previously bumped into Yuri and is somewhat a simp and a loser, explained that their research showed that the Chimera has different characteristics. This new monster had the capability to regenerate and multiply itself, which could be a pain in the ass for the future Sky Wizards. For that reason, Freon wanted to speed up the training process and prepare new students for the upcoming war with the evolved beetles. The next day, all tournament members gathered to pick their match numbers, and due to a random system, the lowest level team could encounter the highest level team in the very first match. After spinning the wheel for eternity, Misora and the girls got a match with the team that was on the same level as their team. Kanata then met with Yuri, who also registered her team for the tournament. Despite knowing that her team members have superior skills, Kanata remained confident in the 3 girls and was determined to face Yuri's team in the finals and win the tournament. The King of Sigmas challenged Yuri that if his team managed to defeat her team, then she would have to join his team. And being optimistic, Yuri accepted his challenge. Hearing those words made Misora and the girls confused because they thought they only needed to win 1 match. Later that day, a student of Class E got attacked by a mysterious hooded figure, which resulted in several severe injuries. These recent attacks had created fear among the students, so Yuri, Chloe, and Lloyd began investigating the case, and so far learned that none of the victims were able to see the attacker's face. While discussing the matter in a cafe, Yuri remembered her past memories with Kanata. 3 years ago, in one of the matches, Kanata saved her from an attack. At that time, Yuri was a newbie, and got impressed by his abilities and secretly had a crush on him. Meanwhile, Kanata was busy teaching his team some cool moves for the upcoming matches. He noticed that the girls lacked cooperation and coordination, so Kanata tried to change roles and formations for each girl to realize their roles perfectly. Unfortunately, to prove themselves, the girls still tended to attack the enemy separately. After some time during an intense training session, Misora and the girls noticed Yuri's team training and saw how a team should work together to fight as one unit. After seeing their strength, the girls became less confident, but Kanata, after a long lecture, managed to revive their spirit. Later that day, Yuri begged Kanata to chat about something very important at a cafe. However, Misora and the girls were secretly following them and overheard their conversation. They arrived at a cafe, and Yuri asked Kanata to stop teaching Fire Team E601. She thought that instead of teaching the 3 losers who have no hope of winning the tournament, he should use his abilities for something bigger. Kanata, being a Chad, gave Yuri a reality check. He reminded her that in the past, when he began teaching her, Yuri was very much like the 3 girls and was even having a hard time doing flying magic. According to Kanata, Fire Team E601 was excluded by the Academy, and he can train them to become one of the best teams the Academy ever witnessed. On the other side, Lloyd and Chloe met Freon to report on the progress of the assault cases. They found some unique patterns and similarities about the attacks. So far, all the victims were male students and users of melee weapons. The order of the assault started from the lowest rank classes, and the first victim belonged to an E-rank fire team. Up until now, 3 students of E, D, and C ranks have been attacked by the mysterious hooded individual, so Lloyd thinks there is a possibility that the next victim would be a B rank student. It turned out Lloyd was right, and the next day, a B rank student got attacked by the same mysterious hooded figure. After beating the shit out of the student, the ugly, disgusting loser revealed his identity, who turned out to be Nua, a perverted researcher interested in Yuri. He dreamed of unsheathing his Excalibur by proving to Yuri that he was the most powerful person in the academy. The next morning, while jogging, Lecty encountered Kanata, and even though she looks cute and has a bright future behind her, Kanata remained hard as a rock.
We must stay focused, brothers. We must stay focused.
The two of them sat for a talk as Lecty had some doubts about the training and wanted to ask some questions. She thought their offensive formation was still ineffective because of Misora not being a good attacker. She also finds it difficult for herself to fit in the back position as she heavily relies on close-range attacks. It turned out Kanata already knew about the flaws, but chose to continue the practice formation for each girl to learn how to fight outside the comfort zone. The guy knows his stuff, and told Lecty to trust him and continue to train as it would be very useful later in the tournament. He then took her to the cafe and put her through the torture of serving customers during busy hours, and oh boy, here we go again. At first she was overwhelmed by the number of customers she served, but soon after understood what she had to do in the back position. The next day while training, Lecty began studying Misora's attack patterns and gave her directions from a distance. On the other side, Misora just needed to make sure that her every shot was on target. Meanwhile, Rico and Lecty dealt with the enemies who escaped Misora's shots. They continued their practice, and thanks to extraordinary cooperation, finally found the perfect attack and defense formation. Kanata later invited the girls to clean a room that would later become the team headquarters. The room had not been used for quite a while, and as a result had dust thicker than your average brain. Meanwhile, Chloe and Lloyd visited the A-rank student who had been attacked recently, and concluded that the hooded attacker's next target would be an S-rank student. At the same time, Kanata and Yuri were talking in a park. He remembered he once told Yuri to switch from a sword to a spear because of a habit of backing away after attacking the opponent. However, Yuri insisted on using the sword as her main weapon, and didn't listen to Kanata's advice. While they were talking, suddenly Nua arrived and challenged Yuri. She accepted the challenge and told Kanata to keep his ugly ass away, and not interfere. Yuri summoned her sword and rushed towards the mysterious man, but he destroyed all laws of physics and joined the DC universe. Nua began to move in a flurry of speed, and dodged every attack from Yuri. As it turned out, his fighting abilities and magic were far superior to Yuri's. Nua closed the distance with ease, and as their swords clashed, the idiot loser proposed to Yuri. All of this made her confused, and just then Nua attacked Yuri, giving her some serious injuries. Even though cornered and badly injured, Yuri stood up and managed to disarm Nua. This irritated the already crazy piece of shit, and he began to slash Yuri with an advanced attack called the Wind Slash. But before he could kill Yuri, fortunately Kanata intervened and managed to protect her. The hopeless simp lost his temper and launched a series of attacks at Kanata, but he blocked all the attacks and counter-attacked him. However, before running away, Nua hit Yuri and made her pass out. That night, Nua felt humiliated and frustrated because Kanata had obstructed his plan. He began hearing voices in his head. As it turned out, the day Kanata killed the Chimera, a part of its consciousness somehow survived and instigated Nua to use its powers to become stronger. On the other hand, Kanata took Yuri to the girls' room so that she could spend the rest of the night surrounded by them. Upon regaining consciousness, Yuri felt awkward with the girls but eventually grew closer and became friends. Kanata then returned with a good luck charm for Yuri, and shortly after thanking him for saving her, Yuri returned to her dormitory. When the day of the tournament finally arrived, Misora became more tense and suddenly drifted away from Lecty and Rico. Kanata noticed her behavior and tried asking what's really bothering her. She finally told him that she was starting to feel useless and a burden to Lecty and Rico. Kanata tried to convince her that she's overthinking and her assumptions were false. He told Misora to look at the surroundings, and when the time would come, she would know what to do. As the match began, Misora alone attacked the other team members, but they managed to dodge it with ease. The enemy then launched a series of attacks, almost knocking out Misora. As it turned out, she still lacked confidence, but remembered what Kanata told her earlier. Her team members started attacking the enemy team, giving Misora enough time to realize her mistake. She used this opportunity to charge magical energy into her sword, and prepared to blast out the enemy team. Her cannon attack was powerful enough to knock down all the opposing team members, making Kanata's team win their first ever match and qualify for the next round. On the other side, Nua was conducting a secret experiment on Chimera's body part. He extracted Chimera's powers into a liquid and injected himself with it. Meanwhile, Kanata's team continued to win one match after another, and after successfully getting rid of several teams, they were finally able to qualify for the finals against Yuri's team. The girls outdid themselves and left everyone, including Freon, speechless. A few days before the final match, news about Team E601, which was about to be disbanded and is now in the finals, spread like wildfire. When the day of the final match arrived, the audience preferred to cheer for Yuri's team as they had better stats, and many people still considered Kanata's team to be made up of traitors and misfits. However, Misora and the girls stayed strong and couldn't wait to prove their capabilities to the whole crowd. As the match began, both teams seemed to fight equally. Their swords clashed, and after a series of barrage attacks, it was time for Yuri's team to attack. Fortunately, Rico stopped a direct hit and saved Lekti. As the battle continued, Yuri's team began to dominate the match. It turned out they had analyzed every attack pattern of Kanata's team, and knew exactly how the girls would respond. The captain of Yuri's team began chasing around Misora, and even the judges were certain that the winning team would be Yuri's. However, it was all part of Misora's plan. She lured the captain of Yuri's team to Riko's shooting range, who miraculously survived her head-on kill shot. Back in the audience, Kanata told Yuri not to underestimate his team's potential, and that everything is going according to the plan. Yuri suddenly looked at the battlefield and realized that all her team members had stacked along Misora's line of fire. It turned out Riko's attack was just a decoy. But before Yuri could warn her team members, Misora fired the cannon blast and secured a victory for her team. As dust settled down, Yuri's team members were all lying on the ground, and all the spectators, including Freon, were shocked. Unfortunately, before the girls could celebrate their victory, Nua interrupted them after killing the broadcaster. He then broke into the security room and triggered the beetle attack alarm. After spreading fear among the students, Nua blew up the broadcast room and appeared in the center of the arena. He began admiring Yuri's plot and expressed his love for her, but before he could toast her buns,
What do you mean by that?
Kanata landed a powerful kick, throwing the hopeless simp far away. Since he was heavily juiced up by Chimera, Nua suddenly got up and threw several chairs at Kanata, injuring his leg in the process. Seeing that, Yuri drew her sword and tried to fight against Nua, but he was desperate to develop plot with her and easily broke Yuri's sword. And I don't even want to imagine the things he was planning to do to her in bed. To stop the monster, Misora and the girls had also joined the fight, and attacked Nua with a cannon blast. Knowing that the monster was not the one to spend first 5 minutes talking, Lloyd and Chloe shot their energy blasts at Nua, who largely remained unharmed. By this time, Chimera's DNA started to work, transforming Nua into a monster who clearly has never skipped the gym. He then blocked Lloyd and Chloe from interfering, and gripped Yuri so tightly that she began to pass out. To stop the ugly monster from creating its disgusting hybrid offspring, Kanata used his full power and summoned his big black sword. He began attacking the monster, cutting him into pieces, but it withstood Kanata's attacks and regenerated the missing limbs. The monster used its energy attack, which Kanata stopped using his very own energy blast. It turned out, Kanata all this time was also carrying the beetle's powers that he faced in the beginning. At that moment, Misora, Lekti, and Riko combined their strengths and attacked the monster simultaneously. They managed to free Yuri from the monster's stronghold. But before she could get away, the monster attacked her with its tentacles. To save Yuri, Kanata got between and sacrificed himself, but before the monster could finish him and develop a plot with the girls, Yuri and the girls united their strengths and began attacking Nua. Thanks to Misora, Lekti, and Riko, Yuri got the time to summon her anti-regeneration spear and stabbed the monster's chest.
It was at this moment he knew. He fucked up.
Her spear was the only weapon that could stop the monster from regenerating. Its body began to disintegrate as the monster fell to the ground, and thanks to Yuri and Kanata's team, the day was saved. After defeating the monster, the situation in Miss Gun was safe once again, and the injured people were taken to the hospital. Being an MC, and with regeneration powers of Chimera, Kanata survived the injuries, but as always didn't take any credit and ran away. On the other hand, Freon fulfilled her promise and lifted the suspension penalty of Team E601, and Kanata remained their instructor. Within a few days, Yuri also joined Team E601 as she promised, and Kanata continued teaching the girls to become the best team in the Sky Wizard Academy. While regretting his decision, Kanata walked towards the administration building to meet Freon. Everyone who saw Kanata in the academy accused him of being a traitor, but Kanata had been hearing these words for many years and doesn't give a fuck about it anymore. While crossing the stairs, Kanata encountered Yuri, who called him a traitor. It's still unclear why many people call him a traitor, but based on their conversation it seems related to the incident when the beetle monsters attacked. Kanata then along with Chloe arrived at Freon's office, and by the time he got there Kanata thought that something was off about Freon wanting to talk to his ugly ass. She explained that he would be assigned as the new instructor for the 3 worst students of the academy. Kanata initially refused the offer as he wasn't into developing the harem plot, but upon learning that no other instructor was ready to teach the girls he accepted the task. Kanata received the files of the 3 misfits and later went to the Fire Team E601 classroom to meet the girls. Meanwhile, Riko, Misora and Lecty were talking about the pervert guy they met in the morning when suddenly Kanata entered the classroom. He introduced himself as their new instructor, and the girls' reactions said it all. They looked less than happy after finding out that the pervert and traitor they encountered previously was going to be their instructor. Misora refused to accept Kanata as their instructor because she thinks that he is irresponsible, and didn't bother to learn about their characteristics. However, Kanata invalidated the girls' accusations by reading out all the info he gathered from their files. Misora thought he sounded like a scam artist and mentioned how he became a chicken after fighting the beetle monsters some 6 months ago. Moreover, he refused to carry out any missions that resulted in his team failing to take a S-rank level up exam. And since then he has been dubbed as the traitor. Kanata couldn't believe this, and it seemed the tips from his books on how to make a harem were not paying off. However, Kanata didn't give a dime about this and informed the girls that it was the academy's decision, and he's going to be their instructor whether they like him or not. He stated that he had once held the title of the Great Swordsman and was nicknamed the Black Swordsman. Kanata was sure that he could train the 3 girls, making them stronger than the other students. After hearing this, the girls became excited and were eager to learn sword techniques from Kanata.
Nice.
The next day, their training began, and Kanata took them to the sky to see the fighting capabilities of the 3 girls by facing them head to head. He flew on a hoverboard thingy and faced the girls even though he didn't need to use flying magic. He was confident and told the girls that the training would end if they could defeat him. Soon after, Kanata took to the clouds and awaited the attacks. Misora began to chase after Kanata, and he realized that the girls had no teamwork or any strategy. He began to analyze the strengths and weaknesses of each girl and learned that Misora had speed and stamina. After which Kanata maneuvered around in all directions and got out of Misora's sight. However, he was soon found by Lecty, who began attacking Kanata with her twin swords. He concluded that Lecty had super agility and accurate movements, but she was often hesitant to attack and apologized all the time. No doubt, Lecty had considerable potential, but Kanata still had to train her to overcome her doubts and fears. At the same time, Riko began preparing to snipe Kanata's head like a watermelon from a distance. Fortunately, he was able to dodge the bullet and also protect Lecty from the shot. Kanata realized that among the 3 girls, Riko was the best at analyzing and accuracy. He later learned that Riko purposely weakened the bullet's firepower upon realizing that it was about to hit Lecty. Meanwhile, Misora continued flying in all directions and still failed to find Kanata amongst the thick clouds. Kanata then decided to end the training, and the girls returned to the academy's dormitory. The girls, especially Misora, was frustrated for not being able to beat Kanata. Later that day, he arrived at the dormitory to meet his 3 students. However, the girls were shocked because of Kanata's sudden appearance while changing clothes. They took out their huge sword guns, asking the ugly pervert to leave their room, and Kanata had no other option besides saving his Todger and getting out of there. The next day, Kanata told his 3 students that he would provide special training to each girl. Riko was reluctant to join the special training and happily left the lesson. Kanata also made no effort to stop the daddy's princess and let her do whatever she wanted. However, Misora and Lecty would still carry out the special training. Kanata then took Lecty for shopping and bought a sexy maid costume for her. He later ordered Lecty to distribute flyers while wearing the outfit. She felt nervous and embarrassed but continued to perform the activity like a sheep. Afterwards, Kanata ordered Misora to follow Riko all day like a creep and discover her weaknesses. At first, she refused to do that, but because Kanata forced her, Misora reluctantly agreed to follow Riko. Meanwhile, Lecty was still trying to gather the courage to distribute the flyers. After some time, a group of boys approached her and she instantly became nervous, but was able to distribute flyers to them. After this, she became confident enough and slowly began to distribute flyers to more people. Meanwhile, Misora, who was assigned to follow Riko, got caught by her. Riko then invited Misora to go shopping together, and this was just the opportunity Misora needed. While shopping, Misora observed that Riko has a peculiar taste and likes to buy philosophical books and cute stuffed sheep. Seeing her strange behavior, Misora was confused about Riko's weaknesses. On the other side, by now Lecty had gotten used to the crowd and distributed all the flyers. She eventually completed the special task and went straight to meet Kanata in a cafe. He was a bit surprised but praised Lecty for getting over her fear and completing the task. Just when she expected a loving hand on her head, Kanata gave her the next task as a part-time waitress at a cafe.